Hello and welcome to Newscentre. With me, Parikshit Luthra. The much-awaited India-UK free trade agreement looks unlikely to be completed by Diwali, which was a target both countries had agreed on in April this year. It now seems that the final deal could get delayed due to the unresolved issues and divisions within the Liz Truss cabinet. Among the pending issues are mobility of professionals, data localization, tariff on Scotch whisky and access for legal services. Also, the recent comments by UK Home Secretary Suella Braverman on Indian migrants have only added to the difficulties. Braverman, in a recent interview, said that Indian migrants are the largest group of people who overstay. Sources in the Indian government, while asserting that resettlement and migration aren't part of FTA negotiations, have said that the ball is now in the UK Prime Minister's court to take a decision. Let's now go across to our guest. We're joined by Rahul Chhabra, former Secretary, Economic Relations at the Ministry of External Affairs, Jayant Dasgupta, Foreign Indian Ambassador to the WTO, also David Lawrence, Research Fellow at the Chatham House. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Ambassador Chhabra, coming to you, the Time newspaper in UK is reporting that the India-UK FTA is in peril and on the verge of collapse. And this is primarily because of the comments made by the UK Home Secretary. Would you go to the extent of saying that the deal is in jeopardy?
Good evening, Parikshit. Thank you for having me on your show. No, I don't think. I think that's a little alarmist view of the situation. There are issues, and there are always these sort of issues. Some of them happen at the last moment. Some happen due to internal political sort of differences within different countries. So I think if you look at it in a more calm manner, issues can always be resolved. The top leadership is committed. And the most important thing, as in fact the UK spokesperson has also said, that we don't want to sacrifice quality for speed. So let's just wait and see how this thing evolves. This is just one of the issues that has come up. There are other issues that you mentioned also regarding whether even government procurement, whether market access will be front-loaded or there'll be graded relaxations in government procurement. So there are several other issues also which are all being sorted out. The nitty-gritty when you come down to it, but labor mobility is the most important issue from our point of view, because that is one of India's biggest exports now.
Right, that's an important point, and I'll take that to Jayant Dasgupta. Ambassador Dasgupta, even as Indian government sources say that we were never speaking about resettlement of Indians who are going to the UK for work, we're only asking for mobility of individuals on short-term visas to deliver goods and services as per the FTA. Do you think this mobility debate that has been triggered by the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is somewhere very critical and at the center of what we have been asking for in terms of more access for our skilled professionals?
Well, I would like to make a distinction between the movement of natural persons, as the WTO describes it, which is skilled professionals who go on a work visa for a limited period of time. It may be 1 year, 2 years. In the case of the US, it is 3 years. H-1B visa is what the US calls it. Now, these people, if they are competent and they show good work, they are sometimes asked to stay on by their employers. And the employers are the ones who sponsor them. So they ask for an extension of the work permit or work visa. So that is how the process goes on. As we all know, there is a shortage of skilled professionals in most of the Western world, including in the UK. So this is something which, of course, is a standing demand of India, that there should be certainty and there should be no non-transparent barriers, which are put in to prevent the movement of natural professionals. So I don't think Suella Braverman by herself would be, against the movement of natural professionals. I think what she has mentioned, natural persons, what she has mentioned is that people are overstaying, but that could be for two reasons. As I mentioned, people who go on a work permit are sometimes asked by the host company to stay on, and they themselves apply for an extension of the visa. So in that case, it is perfectly legitimate and it is up to the UK government to accept it or reject it. So I think the statement may have been quoted slightly out of context. So that is one point. The second point is that in a host of other areas, there are some niggling issues, minor issues, but which could prevent a successful conclusion of the whole FTA before Diwali, as has been projected by the former British PM Boris Johnson. So that is something, the leaders of the two countries in bilateral FTAs normally set very tight deadlines and very ambitious targets. That is to spur on the negotiators of both sides to put in extra effort to burn the midnight oil and try to achieve those targets. But on many occasions, there are issues which cannot be resolved, which need deeper examination, more consultation with the industry, with other ministries, and it takes time. So that is where matters stand today. I'm sure the negotiators of the two sides are working extra hard to meet the 24th October deadline.
Right. So the UK Department for International Trade also saying that they will not sacrifice quality for speed. They're ambitious about this trade deal, but they want to make sure that their issues are also addressed. David Lawrence, to get you in at this stage, the impression that we're getting after speaking to Indian authorities is that the ball is really now in the UK Prime Minister's court, and the deal probably is being held back because of the economic challenges that the UK is now facing, and also infighting within Liz Truss's own cabinet. To what extent do you think this is a correct assessment?
Well, I can't understand at all why the Home Secretary decided to make those comments. I can only hope that it's a bit of an embarrassing mistake. I think the UK wants this deal with India. The government has always emphasised that it's a priority. It shouldn't come as any surprise to the UK side that India wants mobility. We know that that's something that is very important to India. That's something that India sought in the stalled EU-India trade negotiations. It's always been on the table. It's always been a priority. So it really should not be a surprise to Suella Braverman at all that is going to be a part of the deal. Secondly, the UK desperately needs workers. We have a major labour shortage at the moment. Anyone who tried to get a flight in the UK this summer, people who are on NHS waiting lists right now, waiting for nurses, even just ordering a coffee in a cafe, it's all become a lot slower, prices are higher, and that's related to our reduced workforce. That's a result of Brexit in part, also a result of the pandemic, which decreased the size of the workforce. So we desperately need more workers, and this is something that could be addressed through this deal. Thirdly, the UK needs more trading partners. We've cut off ties with the European Union, and those who supported Brexit had always said that one thing we would do is increase ties with countries like India, like Commonwealth countries. So far, that hasn't really happened. We have one new deal with Australia, one with New Zealand, a revamped deal with Japan. These are ultimately, with the exception of Japan, these are relatively small trading partners. India is a growing economy. It's just overtaken the UK as the world's 5th largest economy. And so this should be a complete priority. And lastly, the UK needs India for geopolitical reasons. Both India and the UK are concerned about China's rising dominance in Asia. The UK has committed to an Indo-Pacific tilt, which means focusing more of its trade and military and geopolitical ambitions on that part of the world. So it doesn't make sense to put a spanner in the works and to slow this down, especially when there was a stated ambition of wrapping this up before Diwali. So I'm surprised at what the Home Secretary's said, and I'm sure that she will be. I'm sure that the Prime Minister won't be happy with the comments she's made.
All right, and we do believe that the UK Prime Minister's office has distanced itself from statements made by Braverman. But let me go back to Mr. Rahul Chhabra, Ambassador Rahul Chhabra. Ambassador Chhabra, what, according to you, are India's key interests for India that we would like incorporated in that deal? From your experience, what do you think will be the non-negotiables as far as India goes?
The issue of this mobility under Mode 4 and, because this is really our biggest export now, manpower export, and these are skilled, highly qualified people. We are talking of accountants, lawyers, professors, doctors, nurses. So this isn't really the sort of people that the Home Secretary may have referred to for other reasons. You know, the people who overstay and who may not really be following, as Ambassador Dasgupta mentioned, the ones that I'm talking about now, these and the ones that the FTA will be dealing with are people who the corporates themselves, their own employers are asking for extensions of stay. But I think she was referring to a different set of people who also go there and probably stay on. So there's a little mismatch in that also, and that has been played up. So that would be pretty much a red line for us, because we would require ease of access for that, ease of access to students who are going there. You know, there are over 100,000 students who went in last year. That's an 89% jump from the previous year. So students are going there, ease of just traveling for business purposes. So this sort of visas are, you know, an ease of movement of people. So that would be pretty much a red line. On the other hand, I think the UK has got their own set of requirements, which is sort of duties on scotch, on automobiles, government procurement, sort of getting access to it, data localization for their IT companies. We already have domestic laws, so we won't be able to bypass that, but the UK wants that the data which their companies provide should be able to be moved out of India, but we have our own data localization laws. There are also access to financial services, legal services that the UK would like. So there are these issues, but they're all being none of them are insurmountable. I mean, they're all sortable.
Right. Ambassador Dasgupta, data localization, considering that our law is still under works, do you think this may delay the signing of the free trade agreement?
I don't think data localization is such a big problem with the UK, because the UK is, I think, keener on protecting the data that it provides to Indian big data analytics firms, which analyze, and that should not get out of hand. As far as data generated in India is concerned, and that is where the catch lies. That is where we are facing a problem where, in regard to the US, for instance, that data generated in India should be localized in India unless it is anonymous data, like data which is collected at traffic junctions. But data, for instance, which is collected by, let's say, the big players which operate online platforms for selling various kinds of products. Now, the data that they generate, that should not be easily, transferable. That is the question that the government is struggling with. That is not personal data. That is data which has been gleaned out of a business, but it provides cross-sectional data of consumer choices, about income levels, about the kind of spending that people are willing to engage in. So that is very valuable data. So I think data localization has various aspects to it. Britain does not have very large data analytics firms like in the US, because all these major IT companies, or let's say the companies like Google, Facebook, etc., they all collect a mass of data, and at the moment that data is available to big analytics companies in the US and in the rest of the world, data which is collected in India, and that is getting sold, and that is getting processed. So that is where the new legislation will try to attempt to get the benefits to Indian companies which set up base in India and exploit and use their expertise to do the big data analytics. So I think there is a bit of a confusion about what exactly is UK's demand on data localization. As far as the other issues are concerned, I agree with Rahul Chhabra that they are solvable, but they will need careful, I think, meeting of the minds after due deliberations if there hasn't consensus hasn't been reached. The other two problems which I see, which are there in the background somewhere, but which could assume slightly more serious proportions is about the environment and labor standards, etc. Now, that has been a point which India has not really agreed in conceding, and that will come up in the India-EU FTA as well. And should there be an FTA
Ambassador
discussion
Dasgupta, I'm
with
going
the
to take
US,
quick final comments. We're running out of time. Yeah, let me get in David Lawrence as well. We'll just take quick comments, final comments from our panelists. David, to get you in at this stage, when it comes to the UK, when it comes to Liz Truss, in the last few months, we were hearing that no matter who the Prime Minister is, they would be wanting to get a deal with India as soon as possible. They would like to show it as a victory at home amidst all these economic challenges. Do you think, if not by Diwali, we could possibly see a deal going through in the next 4 to 5 weeks?
I think that sounds a little bit optimistic to me, not because of necessarily because of these particular challenges, but I think in general, trade agreements tend not to run on time. That's the typical experience. I think the deals, even the easier deals to negotiate, such as with Australia and New Zealand, were a bit behind schedule. Same with Japan, and of course with the deal with the EU. So I think that would be a bit optimistic. That said, I think before the next Parliament and possibly next year should be doable. I think that both parties will be keen to increase trade ties with India. So if it ends up being a Labour government in the future, I think you'll still see that prioritisation. And I think that both parties will also want to link this to the geopolitical challenges, which I mentioned earlier, that they want to emphasise that India is a key ally at this time of geopolitical fracturing. I think what I would be interested in seeing, and what my research at Chatham House has focused on, is whether you could extend that beyond bilateral agreements to look at the Commonwealth as a whole. Maybe the Commonwealth as a whole could be a forum through which we could have greater migration, aid, technology transfer. I think that at the moment the Commonwealth is lacking a bit of clarity of purpose. I think the Queen's death has brought that into focus. And so I think this is a real opportunity to reimagine what the Commonwealth could be. I think trade, migration, technology are all going to be a part of that.
All right. My final question, Ambassador Chhabra. Ambassador Chhabra, very quickly, do you feel that the economic challenges that the UK is facing are somehow weighing on the UK Prime Minister's mind when these negotiations are on?
They would be. It's natural for them to weigh on. She cannot ignore what is happening domestically. But then she has realized, as the other speakers have mentioned, that there are other geopolitical compulsions to how to move forward. And a signal needs to be sent out. So it's very important from that point of view also. So I think she would be looking at it very positively and will be pushing for an early completion of the deal. That's the feedback we've been getting from my interlocutors that I've heard of.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Chhabra, Ambassador Dasgupta, David Lawrence, for joining us, giving us a sense of the India-UK FTA talks. Clearly, maybe not by Diwali, but very soon is the sense that we are getting from the Indian government and also from officials in the UK. We're going to take a short break here on Newscentre. When we return, we shift our focus to the White House National Security Strategy, which has been released, which highlights global priorities and threats that the United States sees for the next 10 years. We will be joined by former Indian Ambassador to the United States, Meera Shankar.